I came home late and found my wife standing by the door with a suitcase. She said, "I'm leaving you for someone who actually matters." My heart dropped. When I warned her that walking out meant the end, she smirked and said, "We've been over for months." She walked away, so I made sure she never forgot me. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. The November wind bit through Henry Rowan's jacket as he pulled his truck into the driveway. His shoulders ached from 8 hours of hauling freight at the distribution yard, muscles tight and protesting every shift of the steering wheel. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m., later than he'd promised, but the shipment had been delayed and someone needed to stay. That someone was always him. He killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, watching his breath fog the windshield. The house looked wrong. It took him a moment to understand why. The porch light was on. Lindsay never left it on when he worked late. She said it wasted electricity, so the neighbors would think they were showing off. Henry had stopped arguing about it years ago, the way he'd stopped arguing about most things. Marriage was compromise, his father had told him once. Pick your battles. He grabbed his thermos and lunch bag from the passenger seat, every movement deliberate. The cold had settled into his joints, making him feel older than 34. Inside would be warm. Lindsay would probably be asleep already, curled on her side of the bed with her phone charging on the nightstand. The porch steps creaked under his boots. He'd been meaning to fix that for months. Henry turned his key in the lock and pushed open the door. Lindsay stood in the entryway, backlit by the living room lamp. She wore jeans and the blue sweater he'd bought her last Christmas, the one she said made her look washed out but wore anyway when she wanted to feel put together. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, tight and severe. At her feet sat a gray rolling suitcase, the medium-sized one they'd used for her sister's wedding 2 years ago. Her hands were trembling, but her face looked carved from stone. Practiced. Rehearsed. "I'm leaving," she said. No preamble. No soft entry into the conversation. Henry set his thermos on the small table by the door. His lunch bag followed. He didn't take his eyes off her. "Leaving," he repeated. Not a question. "I found someone who actually shows up for me." The words came out rushed, defensive, like she'd been building to this moment and needed to get it all out before she lost her nerve. Someone who makes time, who doesn't treat me like an afterthought. The house was too quiet. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Outside, a car passed on Maple Street, its headlights briefly washing across the curtained windows. Henry unzipped his jacket slowly. "How long? Does it matter?" "Yes." She looked away, jaw tight. 3 months. 3 months. Henry let that sink in. 3 months of her coming home with that tight smile, claiming she'd had a long shift at the hospital. 3 months of her phone angled away when she texted. 3 months of her pulling away when he reached for her hand. 3 months of him noticing but saying nothing, hoping he was wrong. "Who is he?" Henry asked, his voice flat. "That doesn't. Who is he, Lindsay?" She flinched at the edge in his tone. "Someone who sees me, who appreciates me." Henry folded his jacket over the back of the chair, taking his time. When he looked at her again, something had shifted in his expression. Something colder. "If you walk out that door tonight," he said quietly, "there's no coming back." Lindsay scoffed, but the sound came out strangled. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes, that didn't even try. "We've been done for months, Henry. You just didn't see it. Or maybe you did, and you were too busy with your precious job to care." "I work to keep this house," he said. "To keep the insurance that paid for your student loans. To keep the lights on and food in the fridge." "I work too. Part-time," Henry interrupted. "By choice. We talked about that. You said you wanted time to figure out what you wanted to do next." "I figured it out," she shot back, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. "I want someone who's present, who doesn't treat our marriage like another item on his to-do list." Henry stood there, 6 feet of tired muscle and calloused hands, watching the woman he'd married prepare to leave him. He thought about stopping her, thought about asking her to wait, to talk, to try. Instead, he stepped aside. "Go," he said. Lindsay stared at him, her breathing shallow. For just a second, uncertainty flickered across her face, like she'd expected him to fight harder, to beg. When he didn't, She grabbed her suitcase and yanked open the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of coming snow. She paused on the threshold. I'll come back for the rest of my things next week. No, Henry said. You won't. She turned, confusion replacing anger. What? You heard me. Whatever you didn't take tonight stays here. After I file, you can have your lawyer contact mine about retrieving your property. File. Her voice went up an octave. You're being dramatic. You cheated on me, Henry said, each word precise and measured. You planned this. Pack your bag. Rehearse your lines. This wasn't some moment of weakness, Lindsay. This was calculated. Get out. She flinched like he'd struck her. Then her face hardened again, that rehearsed mask sliding back into place. Fine. Have it your way. She walked out. Henry waited until she dragged her suitcase down the porch steps, until he heard the car door slam and the engine start. Then he closed the door. The deadbolt clicked into place with a sound like finality. His hand didn't shake. Henry stood in the entryway for a long time after her taillights disappeared down Maple Street. The house felt different now. Emptier, but also clearer somehow. Like a weight he hadn't known he was carrying had suddenly lifted. He walked through the rooms slowly, cataloging the changes. The living room looked mostly the same at first glance, but the framed photo of their wedding was gone from the mantel. So was the picture from their trip to Michigan, the one where they stood on the beach at sunset, her head on his shoulder. The bookshelf held gaps where her paperbacks used to be. In the kitchen, her favorite coffee mug was missing, the oversized one with the chipped handle that she'd insisted on keeping. The magnetic poetry on the refrigerator had been rearranged into a single line. Sorry, not sorry. Henry stared at it for a moment, then swept the magnets into the trash. The bedroom was worse. Her side of the closet gaped empty, wire hangers swaying slightly in the forced air from the heating vent. The drawer where she kept her jewelry stood open, cleaned out except for a single earring back that had rolled into the corner. He opened the nightstand on her side. Empty. She'd even taken the phone charger. Henry sat on the edge of the bed, springs creaking under his weight. 12 years. They'd met in college, married at 22, built this life together. Or he thought they had. He waited for the emotion to hit. The anger, the grief, the desperate urge to call her and beg her to reconsider. It didn't come. Instead, he felt a strange clarity, like he'd been walking through fog for months and it had suddenly burned away, revealing the landscape he'd been moving through all along. The late nights she'd started working. The way she'd begun volunteering for extra shifts at the hospital, even though she'd been trying to cut back. The new clothes she'd bought, then hidden in the back of the closet. The way she'd changed her phone password and angled the screen away when he walked past. He'd noticed. Some part of him had known. He just hadn't wanted to believe it. Henry stood and walked to the kitchen, his work boots heavy on the hardwood floor. The digital clock on the microwave read 10:23 p.m. In the drawer by the stove, he found a legal pad and a pen. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd eaten 1,000 meals, argued about money, planned vacations they'd never taken, and started writing. Dates first. When had the change started? July, he thought. Maybe late June. She'd gone to a work picnic without him. Said it was just staff and he'd be bored. She'd come home different somehow. Brighter. More energized than he'd seen her in years. He wrote down the shift changes. The new gym membership she'd purchased in August but never used. The way she'd started doing her hair and makeup before heading to what she claimed were overnight shifts. The credit card statements. Henry kept meticulous records, a habit from watching his mother drown in debt after his father left. He wrote down the charges he'd noticed, but not questioned. Dinner at restaurants across town. A hotel stay she'd explained away as a work conference. Gas station purchases in places she had no reason to be. The evidence had been there all along. He'd just been too trusting, or too tired, or too conflict-averse to confront it. Not anymore. By the time dawn light started filtering through the kitchen window, Henry had filled 6 pages. His hand cramped from writing, and his coffee had gone cold in the mug, but the timeline was complete. 3 months of deception, laid out in careful chronological order. He set the pen down and rubbed his eyes. His shift at the distribution yard started in 4 hours, but he wasn't going in today. He had other work to do. Henry stood, joints popping, and walked to the living room. The shared iPad sat on the coffee table where Lindsay always left it, screen dark. He picked it up and powered it on. The tablet's password was still the same, their wedding anniversary, which now felt like a particularly cruel irony. The screen lit up, showing her homepage with its neat rows of apps. Henry opened the messaging app. She hadn't signed out. The first conversation thread that caught his eye was labeled T. He tapped it. Messages filled the screen. Weeks of them. Intimate, casual, mundane. Plans to meet. Complaints about their respective spouses. Photos Henry didn't want to see, but forced himself to look at anyway. Trent Miller. That was his name. Henry scrolled through the messages, his face expressionless. The affair wasn't dramatic or passionate. It was careless. Convenient. Lindsay complaining about Henry's hours. Trent agreeing she deserved better. Discussions about meeting at cheap motels off the highway. Jokes about sneaking around. There was a video call history. Dozens of them, all during hours Henry had been at work. He kept scrolling back, finding the first message. June 23rd. She'd sent, "Thanks for listening today. I really needed that." His response, "Anytime. You know where to find me." Innocent enough. But Henry could see how it had evolved. The gradual shift from friendly to flirtatious to explicit. His jaw tightened. He opened the Photos app. Lindsay had thousands of pictures saved, organized in albums. He found the one labeled Summer 2024. There were pictures of Trent, a man in his late 30s with thinning hair and a soft middle, wearing maintenance uniforms in most of the shots. Nothing special, nothing worth destroying a marriage over. But that wasn't the point, was it? It never was. Henry took screenshots of everything relevant. The messages, the call logs, the photos. He uploaded them to a secure cloud account, then emailed copies to himself. Then he found Trent's profile and Lindsay's contacts. The man had listed his full name, employer, and home address. He worked maintenance at Hollow Creek Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where Lindsay worked part-time in the billing department. And according to his public social media profile, which Henry found after a quick search, Trent Miller was married, had been for 15 years, had 3 kids. Henry sat back against the couch cushions, tablet resting on his knees. Something settled inside him then. Not rage. He'd expected to feel rage. Not even hurt, though that lived somewhere deeper, buried under layers of practicality and self-preservation. What he felt was finality. The marriage was over. Had been over probably long before last night. He'd been living in the ghost of something that had already died. But unlike Lindsay, he wasn't going to just walk away and hope things worked out. He wasn't going to leave himself exposed and vulnerable while she and her married boyfriend figured out their next move. Henry had watched his mother try to be gracious in her divorce, watch her trust that his father would do the right thing, split things fairly, honor their agreements. His father had taken everything he could and left her with debt and empty promises. Henry had been 12 years old, standing in their foreclosed home while his mother cried in the empty master bedroom. He'd promised himself then that he would never be that unprepared, that vulnerable, that stupid. He stood and walked to the home office, the spare bedroom they converted into a workspace. His filing cabinet stood in the corner, organized and labeled. He pulled out the folder marked important documents, marriage certificate, insurance policies, the deed to the house, which was in his name only because he'd purchased it 2 years before they married and they'd never gotten around to adding her. Bank statements showing his income and her part-time earnings. The loan documents for her student debt, which he'd co-signed and been paying down for 7 years. Everything he needed. Henry grabbed his phone and opened his browser. He searched for divorce attorneys in Hollow Creek. 3 results came up. He eliminated one immediately, too small, just out of law school. The second had decent reviews, but seemed to specialize in collaborative divorces. The third was named Janet Keller. Her website was professional and direct. She listed infidelity cases as a specialty and had a reputation for aggressive representation. Henry called her office. The automated message said they opened at 8 a.m. He glanced at the clock. 6:45. He made coffee and waited. At 8:02, a woman answered. Keller Law Offices, this is Rebecca. I need to schedule a consultation with Ms. Keller, Henry said. It's regarding a divorce. Of course. We have an opening this afternoon at 2 or Thursday morning at 9. This afternoon works. And your name? Henry Rowan. Perfect, Mr. Rowan. I have you down for 2 p.m. today. Please bring any relevant documentation, financial records, communication evidence, anything pertaining to marital assets. I will. Thank you. Henry ended the call and looked around the house. Everything was neat, organized. Lindsay had always joked that he was obsessive about keeping things clean. It was a joke with an edge, a criticism wrapped in humor. Now he was grateful for the habit. He spent the morning organizing his evidence, printed out the screenshots from a tablet, compiled financial statements, created a timeline document that laid out Lindsay's affair in clear, unemotional terms. By the time he left for the attorney's office, he had everything in a manila folder, indexed and ready. Janet Keller was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and sharp eyes behind rectangular glasses. Her handshake was firm. "Mr. Rowan," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me what brings you here." Henry set the folder on her desk. "My wife left me last night for another man. She's been having an affair for 3 months. The man is married. I have evidence." Keller opened the folder and began reading through the contents. Her expression didn't change, but Henry saw her eyebrows rise slightly when she got to the message screenshots. "This is thorough," she said after several minutes. "Very thorough. Walk me through the timeline." Henry did. He kept his voice level, factual, reported the events like he was filing an incident report at work. No emotion, just details. When he finished, Keller leaned back in her chair. "Indiana is a no-fault state, Mr. Rowan, but evidence of adultery can still impact the division of assets and, in some cases, spousal maintenance. Given that you have clear documentation of your wife's affair, and given that the affair partner is also married," she paused, tapping a pen against her desk. "This could get complicated if a spouse finds out and decides to pursue legal action of her own. I understand. Do you want to pursue an at-fault divorce based on adultery?" "I want whatever protects my assets and ensures a clean break," Henry said. "I don't want this dragging out. I don't want to give her opportunities to complicate things or try to reconcile." Keller studied him. "Are you certain reconciliation is off the table?" "Completely certain." "Good. Uncertainty makes these processes much harder." She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. "The house is in your name only, you said. Purchased before marriage. Never added her to the deed. That simplifies things. What about other assets?" "Joint accounts. 1 joint checking account. Most of the money in it is from my income. I can provide deposit records." They went through everything. The cars, his truck was paid off and in his name. Her sedan had 3 years left on a loan they'd both signed. Retirement accounts. Credit card debt. The furniture. After an hour, Keller set down her pen. "I can have the initial filing ready by end of business Friday," she said. "Given the evidence and the circumstances, I'm confident we can protect your interests. The process will take several months, but we can request an expedited hearing given the documented infidelity." "How long?" 3 to 4 months, typically. Could be longer if she contests, but Keller glanced at the folder again. "With this evidence, I don't see her fighting too hard. Her attorney will advise her to settle." Henry nodded. "Do it. I'll need a retainer." "How much?" She named a figure. It was substantial, but Henry had been saving for years, preparing for emergencies. This qualified. "I'll transfer the funds today," he said. They shook hands again. As Henry turned to leave, Keller spoke. "Mr. Rowan, one piece of advice." He looked back. "Your wife is going to try to contact you when she receives the papers. Maybe before. She'll want to talk, to explain, possibly to reconcile. It's common." Keller's expression was kind but firm. "Don't engage. Route all communication through me. Anything you say to her can be used in the proceedings, and emotional conversations rarely help your case." "Understood," Henry said. "That won't be a problem." And it wouldn't be. Whatever he'd felt for Lindsay had calcified into something harder during those early morning hours at the kitchen table. She'd made her choice. Now he was making his. 2 days after Lindsay walked out, the call started. The first came Tuesday afternoon while Henry was at work. He'd returned to his shift that morning, grateful for the physical labor that kept his mind occupied. Loading pallets, checking inventory, signing off on shipments. It was mindless, repetitive work that let him function on autopilot while his thoughts churned elsewhere. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Lindsay's name appeared on the screen. He declined the call and got back to work. She called again an hour later, then again that evening. By Wednesday, she'd left 4 voicemails. Henry deleted them without listening. On Thursday, she tried a different approach. A text message appeared. "We need to talk about this like adults." Henry stared at it for a moment, then blocked her number. True to her word, Janet Keller had the divorce papers ready by Friday evening. Henry picked them up from her office on his way home from work, the manila envelope heavy in his hands. "These will be served Monday morning," Keller told him. "I've arranged for professional service at the address you provided. She'll have to sign for them." Lindsay was staying in an apartment complex on the south side of town, a bland 2-story building with vinyl siding and a cracked parking lot. Henry had found the address easily enough. She posted a photo on social media of her new fresh start, forgetting that her account was still public. "What happens after she's served?" Henry asked. "She'll have 30 days to respond. Given the evidence, I expect her attorney will contact me relatively quickly to discuss settlement terms." Keller adjusted her glasses. "In the meantime, document everything. Any contact she attempts, any changes to joint accounts, anything that might be relevant." "I will." Henry drove home through the Friday evening traffic, the envelope on his passenger seat. The weather had turned colder, threatening the first real snow of the season. His truck's heater rattled, another repair he kept putting off. The house felt cavernous when he unlocked the front door. He'd always thought it was the right size for 2 people, maybe even small when they talked about having kids someday. Now it echoed. Henry ordered takeout, General Tso's chicken from the place on River Street, and ate it alone at the kitchen table while scrolling through local news on his phone. Normal stuff. Town council meetings, a new coffee shop opening downtown, high school football scores. His life was imploding, and the world just kept turning. After dinner, he cleaned the kitchen with the same methodical care he applied to everything. Washed the dishes, wiped down the counters, took out the trash. Routine helped. Structure helped. His mother called as he was finishing. "Hey, sweetheart," she said when he answered. "Just checking in. How are you?" Diane Rowan lived 2 hours away in Fort Wayne, in a small house she'd managed to buy after years of working double shifts at the nursing home. She'd rebuilt her life after his father left, but it had taken a decade and cost her health in ways that still worried Henry. "I'm fine, Mom," he said, tucking the phone between his shoulder and ear as he folded the dish towel. "You don't sound fine. What's wrong?" He'd been planning to wait before telling her. Let the divorce process get started. Avoid worrying her unnecessarily. But his mother had a sixth sense for his moods, honed by years of single parenthood and hypervigilance. "Lindsay left," he said simply. Silence on the other end. Then, when Monday night, "Henry," his mother's voice broke slightly. "I'm so sorry. What happened?" "She's been seeing someone else. I filed for divorce yesterday." Another pause. Longer this time. When Diane spoke again, her voice was harder. "Good." Henry blinked. "What?" "I said good. If she cheated on you, then you're doing the right thing. Don't drag it out. Don't try to fix what she broke. Protect yourself." A bitter laugh. "Learn from my mistakes." "Mom, I mean it. Your father strung me along for 2 years after I found out about his first affair. Promised it was over, swore he'd changed. I believed him because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Forgive. Give second chances." Her voice went quiet. "All it did was give him time to hide assets and build his case. By the time I finally filed, he'd cleaned out half our savings and convinced his lawyer I was the unstable one." Henry leaned against the counter. He'd known the broad strokes of his parents' divorce, but his mother rarely talked about the details. "I won't make that mistake," he said. "I know you won't. You're smarter than I was. More prepared." She sighed. "Do you have a good attorney?" "Yes." "Evidence?" "Plenty. Then you'll be fine. It'll hurt like hell for a while, but you'll be fine." A pause. "Do you need me to come down?" "No. I'm okay. Really. Call me if that changes. Any time, day or night." "I will." "Thanks, Mom." After they hung up, Henry stood in his quiet kitchen and thought about his father. Robert Rowan had been a charming man, quick with a joke and generous with money he didn't have. Henry remembered him as larger than life when he was small, a man who could fix anything, who told wild stories, who promised the world. Then the promises had stopped coming true. The late nights, the unexplained expenses, the fights that started soft and ended with slammed doors. His mother crying in the bathroom while Robert made excuses. Henry had been 12 when they'd separated, 14 when the divorce finalized. Old enough to understand what was happening, too young to do anything about it. He'd watched his mother struggle, watched her work herself nearly to death, trying to keep their heads above water. Watched the house get foreclosed, their belongings sold off piece by piece to pay debts Robert had left behind. And he'd promised himself, sworn on everything he had, that he would never be that unprepared, that vulnerable. That's why he kept records, why he lived below his means and saved aggressively, why he'd studied contract law in his spare time and kept every receipt, every statement, every document that might someday matter. His friend called it paranoid. Lindsay had called it controlling. Now it was going to save him. Henry walked to his office and pulled out the folder Keller had given him. Inside were copies of the divorce petition, the evidence summaries, the asset declarations. Everything was in order. Monday morning, Lindsay would be served. The process would begin, and Henry would move forward, one step at a time, until he was free of this mess. He felt no satisfaction in it, no triumph, just determination. Monday came with freezing rain that turned Hollow Creek streets into skating rinks. Henry called into work, a personal day, something he rarely took, and spent the morning watching the clock. The process server was scheduled to arrive at Lindsay's apartment at 10 a.m. At 10:47, Janet Keller called. "It's done," she said. "She's been served." Did she say anything? The process server said she looked confused at first, then started crying when she realized what the papers were. She signed for them and closed the door. Henry absorbed this. What happens now? We wait for her response. She'll likely hire an attorney if she hasn't already. I expect to hear from them within a week or two. Okay. And Mr. Rowan? She may escalate her attempts to contact you. Block her on everything: phone, email, social media. Route any necessary communication through attorneys only. Henry had already blocked her number, but he spent the next hour securing everything else. Facebook, Instagram, email filters. He removed her from their shared streaming accounts, changed passwords on anything they'd shared. It felt petty and vindictive. It also felt necessary. By early afternoon, his phone started buzzing with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He let them all go to voicemail. The first few were Lindsay, crying, begging him to answer. She'd borrowed phones from friends, from coworkers, desperate to get through his blocks. Henry deleted the voicemails and blocked those numbers too. The last call that day came from a number with a different area code. Curious, he answered. "Henry Rowan?" A man's voice, rough and angry. "Who's asking?" "This is Trent Miller. You need to call off your lawyer and stop this insane." Henry hung up. His hands were steady, but something cold settled in his chest. So Lindsay had run to her affair partner, probably crying about how mean and unreasonable Henry was being, how she made a mistake and wanted to work things out, but he wouldn't even talk to her. The phone rang again. Same number. Henry declined it and sent a text to Janet Keller. "The affair partner just called me. Trent Miller. I have the number if you need it." Her response came back within minutes. "Don't engage. This is good for our case. Shows ongoing contact between them. Save the call log." Henry screenshot the call history and emailed it to her. Then he made dinner, pasta with Jared sauce, simple and quick, and ate while reading. No TV, no music, just the quiet of the house and the sound of freezing rain against the windows. He'd expected to feel worse. Expected the loneliness to be crushing, the silence oppressive. Instead, it felt like relief. The fallout spread through Hollow Creek the way everything did in small towns. Not dramatically, but inevitably. It started with Lindsay's sister. Emma had always been the responsible one in Lindsay's family. 3 years older and perpetually exasperated by her younger sister's choices. She called Henry on Tuesday evening. "I heard," she said without preamble. "Mom told me." Henry set down the wrench he'd been using to tighten a loose cabinet hinge. "Okay. Is it true? About the affair?" "Yes." Emma sighed, long and heavy. God, she's an idiot. That's one word for it. Look, I'm not calling to defend her. What she did was wrong. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay. The genuine concern in her voice surprised him. Emma and he had always gotten along well enough at family gatherings, but they'd never been close. I'm managing, he said. Good. That's good. A pause. For what it's worth, she's a mess. Showed up at my place yesterday, crying, saying she'd made a mistake, that you won't even talk to her. I won't. Yeah. I told her she needs to give you space. That she doesn't get to blow up her marriage and then demand you process it on her timeline. Another sigh. She didn't take it well. Left angry. I appreciate you calling, Emma. Take care of yourself, Henry. You deserve better than this. After they hung up, Henry went back to fixing the cabinet. Small repairs around the house helped him focus. Gave him concrete problems with clear solutions. Unlike his marriage, which had been broken in ways he hadn't even fully understood until it was too late. The next day, he ran into Tom Fletcher at the hardware store. Tom worked at the hospital in facilities management, had been there for 15 years. He and Henry had played on the same recreational softball team a few summers back, grabbed beers occasionally after games. Henry, Tom said, coming down the aisle with a cart full of paint supplies. Hey man, how you holding up? Word had spread, apparently. Fine, Henry said, just picking up some supplies. Tom glanced around, then lowered his voice. Look, I don't want to gossip, but there's talk at the hospital about Lindsay and Trent. Henry's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Yeah, people noticed him getting friendly. Nothing concrete, but the whispers started months ago. Tom looked uncomfortable. I should have said something. To you, I mean, but I didn't have proof, and I didn't want to stir up trouble if it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. No, apparently not. Tom shifted his weight. For what it's worth, Trent's wife found out. Someone showed her photos from Lindsay's social media. Her and Trent at some restaurant. She confronted him over the weekend. Henry absorbed this. What happened? He denied everything at first, then admitted to an emotional affair, but swore nothing physical happened. Tom snorted. His wife didn't buy it. Word is she kicked him out, but he's been calling her nonstop, trying to fix it. Good luck with that. Yeah. Tom paused. I'm sorry, man. You didn't deserve this. No, Henry agreed. I didn't. They parted ways, and Henry finished his shopping with Tom's words echoing in his head. So Trent had been caught. His comfortable life disrupted. And instead of standing by Lindsay, he'd gone crawling back to his wife. Predictable. By the end of the week, Henry had heard from 3 more people. A former coworker, a neighbor, a woman from the church Lindsay used to attend. All of them offering awkward condolences, sharing rumors they'd heard, asking if he needed anything. Hollow Creek wasn't big enough for secrets to last long. The calls from Lindsay had stopped, but the messages continued. Now they came via email, long rambling notes that swung wildly between self-pitying and accusatory. Henry read the first one, then set up a filter to automatically forward them to Janet Keller without reading them. She's spiraling, Keller told him during their weekly check-in call. The emails show increasing desperation. This is actually helpful for our case. It demonstrates instability and impulsivity. Has her attorney reached out? Not yet. She may be having trouble finding representation, given the circumstances. No one wants to take a case this clean-cut against documented infidelity. Or she can't afford one. Keller made a non-committal sound. Possibly. Her part-time income won't go far if she's trying to maintain her own place and hire counsel. Henry felt no sympathy. Lindsay had made her choices. Now, she was living with the consequences. Just like he was. The difference was, he prepared for this. She hadn't. 3 weeks after he'd filed, Henry came home from work to find someone sitting on his porch steps. Lindsay. She stood as his truck pulled into the driveway, her arms wrapped around herself against the December cold. She lost weight, he noticed. Her face looked drawn, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. Henry cut the engine and sat for a moment, considering his options. He could call the police. She had no legal right to be here now that she'd moved out. Could document this as harassment. Instead, he got out and walked toward the house, keys in hand. Henry, please, she said before he reached the steps. I just need 5 minutes. No, please. I need to explain. Lindsay, you need to leave. His voice was flat, emotionless. All communication goes through attorneys. You know this. He chose his family. She blurted out, tears streaming down her face. Trent went back to his wife. He won't even talk to me anymore. He blocked my number. Henry stopped at the bottom of the steps. I know. She stared at him. You knew. I knew what kind of man cheats with someone else's wife, he said calmly. They don't make sacrifices. They make excuses. Lindsay's face crumpled. She sank back onto the step, shoulders shaking with sobs. I destroyed everything for nothing. Our marriage, my reputation, everything. And for what? For someone who wouldn't even. She broke off, crying too hard to continue. Henry watched her dispassionately. Part of him, some distant, buried part, felt sorry for her. She looked genuinely destroyed, genuinely remorseful. But that part was very small, and it didn't change anything. You need to leave, he repeated. I made a mistake, she choked out between sobs. The biggest mistake of my life. I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. Please, Henry, please give me another chance. No, I love you. You don't. His voice cut through her words like ice. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. Love doesn't plan. Love doesn't lie for 3 months. Love doesn't pack a suitcase and walk out the door. I was confused. I was unhappy. Then you should have talked to me. Gone to counseling. Done literally anything except fuck someone else. She flinched at the profanity. Henry never swore at her. Had prided himself on keeping arguments civil. He was done being civil. You made your choice, he continued. You wanted someone who showed up for you, who made time for you. Well, I was here, every night, working to keep this house, to pay our bills, to build our future. And instead of appreciating that, you decided it wasn't enough. I know I was wrong. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry your affair partner turned out to be exactly as worthless as I knew he'd be. Sorry everyone in town knows what you did. Henry's eyes were hard. But you're not sorry enough to have stopped yourself 3 months ago. Or 2 months ago. Or last week. That's not fair. Fair. Henry's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about fair? You destroyed our marriage, tried to keep it hidden, and only came crying back when your plan fell apart. Nothing about this has been fair, Lindsay. She was sobbing openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. Please, Henry. Please. I'll do anything. Counseling, whatever you want. Just please don't do this. It's already done. You did it when you walked out that door. He pulled out his phone. You're trespassing. If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I'm calling the police. You wouldn't. 55 seconds. Lindsay stood on shaking legs, her face a mask of devastation and disbelief. I can't believe you're being this cruel. Cruel would be stringing you along like you strung me along. Cruel would be lying to you for months while I figured out if I could do better. I'm being honest. He looked at his phone. 40 seconds. She stumbled down the steps, nearly falling on the ice-slick driveway. At her car, she turned back. This isn't you, Henry. This coldness, this anger, it's not who you are. You don't know who I am anymore. You stopped knowing months ago when you decided I wasn't worth your loyalty. She got in her car and drove away, tires spinning on the frozen asphalt. Henry waited until her taillights disappeared, then went inside and locked the door. His hand was shaking now, the adrenaline of confrontation wearing off, leaving him hollow and tired. He called Janet Keller's emergency line and left a message describing what had happened. She called back within 20 minutes. That was a violation of the restraining order we filed last week, she said. Henry had forgotten about that. The no-contact order that prevented Lindsay from coming to his property or workplace. Should I file a police report? He asked. Do you want to? Did he? It would complicate things, make this messy, but it would also establish a pattern if she tried this again. Yes, he said. I'll help you file it tomorrow. And Henry? What you said to her was harsh, but it was also true. Don't second-guess yourself. I won't. But after they hung up, he sat in his dark living room for a long time, replaying the conversation. She'd looked broken, genuinely destroyed, and he'd felt nothing. That should have bothered him more than it did. The police report took 30 minutes to file at the Hollow Creek station. Officer Reynolds, a heavy-set man in his 50s who'd gone to high school with Henry's mother, took down the details with practiced efficiency. She didn't threaten you? Reynolds asked, pen poised over the report form. No. She was crying, asking for another chance. But there's a no-contact order in place. Reynolds nodded. We'll add this to the file. If she shows up again, call immediately. Don't engage. Don't talk to her. Just call. Understood. For what it's worth, Reynolds said as Henry stood to leave, I've seen a lot of these situations. The ones that end cleanest are the ones where people make a decision and stick to it. Sounds like you're doing that. Trying to. December deepened into bitter cold. The first major snowstorm hit 2 days before Christmas, dumping 8 inches on Hollow Creek and shutting down half the town. Henry spent Christmas alone, which he'd expected. His mother had invited him to Fort Wayne, but he'd declined. The roads were bad, and besides, he didn't feel much like celebrating. He ordered Chinese food and watched old movies, the same routine he'd have followed any other night. It was fine. Better than fine, actually. No forced cheer, no pretending everything was okay for the sake of family tradition. Just quiet and peace and the knowledge that he didn't owe anyone his emotional energy right now. The day after Christmas, Janet Keller called. Lindsay's attorney finally made contact, she said. A lawyer out of Indianapolis named Robert Brooks. What did he say? He's requesting a settlement conference. Wants to discuss terms before we go to court. Meaning Lindsay's realized she has no leverage here and wants to negotiate the best deal she can get. Keller's tone was satisfied. We have a meeting scheduled for January 10th. I'll go over our demands beforehand. But essentially, she gets nothing from the house, takes her personal property and her car alone, and we split any joint debt equitably based on who incurred it. What about alimony? Given the documented infidelity and the short duration of the marriage relative to Indiana standards, I think we can avoid any alimony obligations. But we'll see what they propose. The settlement conference took place in a bland office building on the outskirts of Hollow Creek. Henry sat in a conference room with Janet Keller on one side and a stack of documents on the table in front of them. Lindsay arrived 15 minutes late, looking worse than she had on his porch steps. Her attorney, Robert Brooks, was a thin man with a cheap suit and a nervous energy that suggested he knew he was representing a losing case. Thank you all for coming, Brooks began, arranging papers in front of him. We're here to discuss an equitable settlement. There's nothing to discuss, Keller interrupted smoothly. The terms are clear. Mrs. Rowan forfeited her rights to equitable distribution when she engaged in adultery and abandoned the marital home. We're willing to allow her to take her personal property and assume responsibility for her car loan. Everything else stays with Mr. Rowan. Brooks bristled. That's hardly equitable. Indiana law clearly states. Indiana law also allows fault-based divorce, Keller countered. And we have extensive documentation of Mrs. Rowan's affair, which continued even after she left the marital home. Her conduct is indefensible. Lindsay spoke for the first time, her voice small. Henry, please. I know I messed up, but I help pay bills too. I worked. Part-time, Henry said, not looking at her. By choice. The majority of our income came from my job. The majority of our savings came from my discipline. You contributed, but not equally. We were married, she said, tears starting. It was supposed to be a partnership. It was, until you decided to partner with someone else. Brooks jumped in. Mr. Rowan, despite the circumstances of the separation, my client is entitled to her fair share of marital assets. The house appreciated in value during your marriage. The house was purchased before the marriage and is solely in Mr. Rowan's name, Keller said. Any appreciation in value is separate property under Indiana law. They went back and forth for 90 minutes. Brooks tried various angles: emotional distress, Lindsay's reduced earning capacity, the length of the marriage. Keller shot down each one with legal precedent and the evidence of infidelity. Finally, Brooks requested a private conference with his client. Henry and Keller stepped into the hallway. They're going to settle, Keller said quietly. He knows he can't win this. He's probably telling her right now that taking the deal is her best option. How long? 10 minutes. Maybe less. It took 7. Brooks opened the conference room door, his expression defeated. We'll accept the terms. Mrs. Rowan will take her personal property, assume the car loan, and waive any claim to the house or other marital assets. Alimony, Keller asked. Waive debt. She'll assume responsibility for her student loans. Joint credit cards will be split based on who incurred the charges, per your documentation. Keller nodded. I'll have the settlement agreement drawn up by end of week. We can schedule the final hearing for February. Henry glanced through the conference room door. Lindsay sat with her head in her hands, shoulders shaking. He felt nothing. The weeks between the settlement and the final hearing passed in a strange limbo. Henry went to work, came home, maintained his routines. He started running again, something he'd let slide during the marriage. 3 miles every morning before his shift, pushing through the cold and the dark. It helped clear his head. His co-workers had stopped asking how he was doing, which was a relief. The initial wave of sympathy and concern had given way to normalcy. Life moved on. Lindsay tried to contact him one more time in late January. An email, not forwarded to Keller because it came from a new address Henry hadn't filtered yet. Subject line, please read this. He almost deleted it without looking. Almost. Instead, he opened it. Henry, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. But I need you to understand something. I didn't leave because you weren't enough. I left because I was broken and stupid, and I convinced myself that happiness was something external, something I could find in someone else's attention. Trent was a mistake. The affair was a mistake. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I see that now. I see what I had and what I threw away. Every day, I wake up in that apartment, and I remember our house, our life, the way you'd make coffee before I was even awake, the way you'd fix things without being asked, the way you were steady and reliable and present, even when I told myself you weren't. You were everything I needed, and I was too selfish to see it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect another chance. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I hope you find someone who appreciates you the way I should have. Lindsay. Henry read it twice. Then he closed his laptop and went for a run. The words should have meant something. Should have touched some remaining soft part of him that still cared about the woman he'd married. They didn't. Apologies without consequences were just words. And Lindsay's consequences were already set. The final divorce hearing took place on February 14th. Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on Henry. The courtroom was small, functional. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. The hearing itself was brief. Keller presented the settlement agreement. Brooks confirmed his client's acceptance of the terms. The judge reviewed the documents, asked a few clarifying questions, and signed the decree. The marriage between Henry David Rowan and Lindsay and Rowan is hereby dissolved, Judge Morrison said. All terms of the settlement are entered into the court record and are legally binding. That was it. 12 years of marriage ended in 15 minutes. Henry stood, shook Janet Keller's hand, and walked out of the courthouse. Lindsay was standing by her car in the parking lot, crying quietly. She looked up as he passed, but he didn't stop. There was nothing left to say. Spring came slowly to Hollow Creek. The snow melted, revealing brown grass and winter debris. Henry spent his weekends cleaning up the yard, pruning dead branches, preparing the garden beds for planting. He'd always wanted to grow vegetables, but had never gotten around to it during the marriage. Lindsay hadn't been interested, and he'd let slide. Now he ordered seeds online. Tomatoes, peppers, zucchini. Built raised beds from lumber he'd bought at the hardware store. Tom Fletcher stopped by one Saturday afternoon, bringing beer and offering to help. Looking good, Tom said, surveying the beds. You know what you're doing? Learning as I go, Henry replied. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, setting posts and screwing boards together. The spring sun was warm on Henry's back, the first real warmth after months of cold. You seem better, Tom said eventually, than you did a few months ago. Henry considered this. I am better. Good. You deserve it. Tom took a long pull from his beer. For what it's worth, people in town respect how you handle things. No drama, no revenge. Just clean. It was never about revenge, Henry said. It was about protecting myself. Smart man. They finished the garden beds as the sun set. then sat on the porch steps drinking beer and watching the neighborhood come alive with evening activity. Kids playing in yards. Couples walking dogs. Normal life. You think you'll date again? Tom asked. Eventually. Not now. Fair enough. When you're ready, Janet's sister is single. Works at the library. Really sweet. I could. Tom. Too soon. Way too soon. Tom grinned. Just putting it out there. After he left, Henry stayed on the porch as darkness fell. The house behind him was quiet, but no longer felt empty. It felt like his again. His space, his rules, his life. He'd built something here, and he'd protected it when it was threatened. That was enough. In early April, Henry ran into Lindsay's mother at the grocery store. Patricia had always been polite to him, but distant, the way mothers are with sons-in-law they're not sure about. She looked older now, tired around the eyes. Henry, she said, stopping her cart next to his in the produce section. Patricia. An awkward pause. Then, how are you? Fine. You. She nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. Managing. Lindsay moved back in with us, after the divorce. Henry hadn't known, but he wasn't surprised. The apartment had probably been too expensive on her part-time income alone. She's struggling, Patricia continued quietly. Lost her job at the hospital. Can't find work in town. People remember what happened. She's thinking about moving to Indianapolis, starting fresh somewhere people don't know her. Henry said nothing. I'm not asking you to forgive her, Patricia said quickly. I know what she did was wrong. I told her that. But she's my daughter, and it hurts to see her suffering. She made her choices, Henry said. Not unkind, but firm. I know. Patricia looked at him finally, and he saw genuine regret in her eyes. You were good to her. Better than she deserved, probably. I'm sorry for how things ended. So am I. They parted ways, and Henry finished his shopping alone. Lindsay's suffering wasn't his responsibility. Her consequences weren't his to manage or fix. He'd learned that lesson from watching his mother. Learned it the hard way, through years of seeing her sacrifice herself trying to prop up his father's failures. Some people had to hit bottom before they learned, and some people never learned at all. Either way, it wasn't Henry's problem anymore. Summer arrived with heat and humidity, turning Hollow Creek's streets sticky and slow. Henry's garden flourished. Tomatoes ripened on the vine. Peppers grew fat and glossy. Zucchini threatened to take over the entire bed. He gave away the excess to neighbors, to co-workers. Started experimenting with recipes. Pasta sauce from scratch, grilled vegetables, salsa. The house felt lived in again. Different from before, but alive. He'd repainted the bedroom, changed the furniture around, bought new sheets that didn't remind him of anyone. Small changes that added up to a new normal. In late July, Lindsay tried one last time. A voicemail on his phone from a number he didn't recognize. Henry, it's me. Her voice was small, hesitant. I know I'm not supposed to call. I know you don't want to hear from me. But I'm leaving next week. Moving to Indianapolis. And I needed to tell you something before I go. A pause. He could hear her breathing, working up to whatever she wanted to say. I miss our life, she said finally. I miss you. I miss the person I was when we were together, the better version of myself that I only became because you loved me. I threw it all away, and I know that. I live with it every day. Another pause, longer this time. I don't expect you to respond. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm sorry I didn't realize it until it was too late. The voicemail ended. Henry listened to it once, standing in his kitchen with a tomato from the garden in his hand. Then he deleted it. Regret was heavy, he'd learned. Heavier when you had to carry it alone, with no one to share the weight. But that wasn't his burden to bear. Lindsay had made her choices. Now she was living with them, learning what it felt like to lose something irreplaceable. Understanding, finally, that some mistakes couldn't be fixed with apologies and tears. Henry set the tomato on the counter and went back to his evening. Dinner to make, a book to read, a run planned for tomorrow morning. Life moved forward, and so did he.